Yeah, man. Hey, look, welcome back to the Roosevelt Show, man. Hold up. Let me get up in here. Uh, Let me remove this. Welcome y'all back, man, to the Roosevelt Show. I am your host, Roosevelt. Um, Hopefully y'all can hear me clear. I'm working on my editing and everything for the podcast. Like I said, on the previous, video I dropped. But back again, man. Hey, I appreciate y'all for watching, tuning in. Uh, I'm gonna call this an educational episode. You know what I mean? Um, it's a famous quote out there. You know what I mean? By Morgan Freeman. He did an interview with a great interviewer, by the way. I don't remember the interviewer's name, but he asked him. He asked Morgan Freeman, "How do you feel about Black History Month?" You know, Morgan Freeman told him, like, you know what I mean? You can't delegate my history in 1 month. Now, although Black History Month technically was back in February, but I agree, with Morgan Freeman on what he was saying. You know what I mean? Like, you can't delegate Black history in 1 month. There's so many things that, Africans brought to this country and then began to birth African Americans, which also contributed to this country's backbone. The elegance, the food, the culture, the clothes. You know what I mean? Like everything like that. Our history in America, goes a very long way. So I said to myself, you know what I mean? And this is just, it's almost like a reaction, but, historical as well. I found a video, it's only about 5 minutes long, I found a video on the History Channel. Shout out to the History Channel, for bringing this, to light. You know, I will tell y'all, viewers' discretion is advised in advance. I found a story on how, you know, the life would be for slaves traveling from the continent of Africa to the continent of North America. You know what I mean? Like, what was their lives like? Like the beginning of how, the African American, became prevalent in this country. Now, make no mistake, you know what I mean? Of course, there may be some people out there who's like, we've been here before that. Yeah, that's true. That is very true. I'm not here, to refute any of, that information. But I'm talking about the ones specifically that was picked up off the coast of Africa and traveled across the Atlantic and was brought here to, this continent of North America. Let's get into it, man. Let's get into it.
From about 1525 to 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly transported across the Atlantic, a journey that approximately 2 million of them would not survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of enslaved people per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo.
All right, now we're going to stop right there. You know what I mean? Um, Millions and millions of you know, unwillingly Africans from the motherland, you know what I mean, were brought here. You know what I mean? And it 2 million did not survive. 2 million did not survive. And in those times that would be considered like a genocide. You know what I mean? But 2 million did not survive. Some, you know, chose to, jump overboard and, risk their own lives at that matter, which many lives were lost in that manner, because they didn't want to be held captive, which is, you got to think about it. Like, that's some real shit. Like, in these days and times, where we are in 2025, a lot of my, black, brothers and sisters don't realize the struggle of what some of these, some of our ancestors had to endure. You know what I mean? But we're going to continue along.
Before boarding the ships at African port cities, enslaved people were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads forcibly shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, enslaved people lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch those enslaved who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved
Exactly what I was telling some might choose death instead of being a slave, you know what I mean, to somebody else. Like, between the coast of Africa and the landing ports of America at that time, you know early 1500s, 1600s, you know what I mean. um this was, this was something major. You know what I mean? It was a that if you think about it, the price of a human life boosted the economy in so many ways. You know what I mean? Um, as far as you know what this enslaved individual can produce for you, whether it's picking cotton or you know any of the things that would boost the economy at that time. You know what I mean? Fruit. I know cotton was one of the main things, but like we were picking fruit, we were picking cotton. You know what I mean? We were building things. Buildings, houses, homes, structures. Um, Back then, right? Like, so it just makes you think. Like the mentality that some of our ancestors may have had at that time into where we are now today. But we're gonna continue on, man.
moved below deck, enslaved people would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age.
Mm.
Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unchained in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There were no sanitary facilities of any kind. Enslaved people were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions.
Stop right there. Now, imagine yourself in this position. You know what I mean? You lying next to, if you're a man, you'll be lying next to another man, shackled up. You know what I mean? Um, Bathrooms, nah, wasn't nothing like that. If you had to, relieve yourself, number one or number two, you would have to do it right there in the position that you were in. Such uncomfortable living conditions, right? Um, some of the things that our ancestors endured. And I know y'all probably like, Roosevelt, what's your point of making this video? I get it, you know. Um, but I'm gonna tell y'all at the end. I'm gonna give my synopsis on why all of this is important in these days and times. Let's move along.
When combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck, disease was rampant. Dysentery, malaria, yellow fever, smallpox, measles, and influenza ravaged the enslaved and crew members alike. The enslaved people generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender, with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Enslaved people were also subject to forced exercise, which sometimes included dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Enslaved captives deemed disobedient were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat o' nine tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Enslaved people who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris.
All right, we're going to stop right there. You heard what the lady said, rice and beans. Rice and beans. In soul food cooking today, red beans and rice is like a staple in, what we eat. You know what I mean? When you really process and think about that shit, man, makes you wonder, like, damn, like, you know what I mean? Some of these things were, beaten into us. You know what I mean? Some of the foods that we eat, you know what I mean? Y'all got to remember, like I said, y'all have to remember back in those times after the captive slave, right? African, was brought here to this country, stripped of their language. They don't know shit. Excuse me. YouTube trying to monetize this video, so my bad. But they didn't know nothing. They didn't know the native language of the land that they lived in. They had to learn this. A lot of y'all, I'm pretty sure, have watched Roots. Alex Haley, great author, great writer. God rest his soul. But he brought us, some vital information on the inside of what it was like for, one kid, Kunta Kinte, right? Roots. We all knew this. That's just one story. And what he did was he ended up, showing the inside of what it was as a young African boy, which a lot of our ancestors was, that came to this country, didn't know the language, and had to learn the way of the land. It's crazy, man. Like I said, I'm with Morgan Freeman on that. You can't delegate my history in 1 month. Black history is very, very prevalent through all history. Do your research. But I'm gonna share with y'all with these couple minutes that I got that I chose to give y'all this. It's a pre-record, by the way. You know what I mean? But let's move along.
A medieval tool used to force open a person's mouth. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World, carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left present-day Ghana in August of 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors, 62 enslaved people and 7 crew members had perished without reaching their destination. Disease was spreading throughout the ship, and fresh water was running dangerously low. Captain Luke Collingwood was afraid of the financial cost of more deaths. Enslaved people that died of disease were not covered by the ship's insurance, but the enslaved who drowned were. Collingwood ordered approximately 130 enslaved people thrown overboard.
Imagine that. The torture. I said this year to myself, man, I was going to, try to bring y'all a little bit different of some content outside of just podcasting, right? But I wanted to, react to some videos that may educate some of us. 138 people thrown overboard for insurance purposes to ensure that that captain of that ship would be paid because that was in the paperwork that was negotiated. Imagine that. The life of some of our ancestors didn't mean spit. I'm gonna tell y'all at the end, like I said, the reason why I wanted to cover this. We're gonna continue to go. It's only a few more minutes, y'all. Bear with me. Let's go.
He claimed it was necessary to do so to halt the spread of disease. At the trial between the Zong's owners and their insurance company, the owners argued that because it was legal to kill sick animals for the health of a ship, it was legal to treat enslaved people the same. The court agreed with the ship's owners, but the trial itself exposed the horrors aboard the Zong, and its story was republished by British abolitionists with the name of the ship redacted, meant to show that this tragedy could happen on any ship transporting enslaved people across the Middle Passage. 24 years after the Zong trial, the international slave trade was outlawed in both Great Britain and the United States. It would take England an additional 26 years and the U.S. another 58 years plus a civil war before the practice of slavery was officially abolished.
Now, let me remind you, America gained its freedom or declared its freedom in the year of 1876. The transportation of Africans to the continent of North America ended in 1865. "12 years from America's freedom." All right, now think of this. Some of the former presidents of this country have owned slaves or servants, however you look at it. It's just something to think about. Like I said, I'm gonna get to my synopsis. So, hold on. All right, there we go. So, like I said, I'm gonna get to my synopsis. Brothers and sisters out here in these gangs, these streets, cliques, whatever, killing each other. I don't know how many of y'all gonna watch this. I don't know how many of y'all are gonna, catch this, but I'm gonna try to spread it, clip it up, TikTok, all of it, Facebook, YouTube. I'm gonna try to cover this on so many platforms. Think about before you pulling that trigger or you about to do something to one of your own kind. Think about some of the things our ancestors had to endure for you to be able to exist here in this land of opportunity. America is a land of opportunity. It is. Yeah, for sure. It is. I want y'all to think about shit. Excuse me. Spit. My bad, YouTube. Again, I'm trying not to cuss because I want to get monetized for this video. So bear with me. All right. But think about before you go out, and go do some something that'll make you crash out. Think about it. It makes sense for you to respect your ancestors' contribution to your existence in this very land that we call these United States of America. I think sometimes we take it for granted. History is just history. That's what a lot of people may say. But history is also important. If you don't know not from where you come from, you will not know where you're going. Real talk. It's your boy Roosevelt, man. Y'all stay tuned. I'm going to be bringing y'all a lot more reaction videos like this. If you like the content, like, subscribe, comment. No cost you nothing. But on that note, man, I'm gone. Peace, love, and hair.